Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're going to talk to somebody that helps people publish books. And these are not necessarily accomplished authors. These are just people that have something to say, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. He walks that journey from the very beginning, from the concept to the editing to the character development, if that needs to get done, all of it, right down to the cover art and the marketing of the book. Today, we're going to look at TV shows, maybe movies based on books. I think you'll be surprised how much we consume on watching the screen actually started with a book. NFB Publishing is his company. Mark Pogodzinski is back with us today. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Now I'm thinking about stuff I've seen even recently or even rewatched. That might have been based on a book. And as I'm seeing, I started watching I think I shared with you Old Man, a TV show that came out 22. And now that I remember seeing the credits, it says based on the book by, didn't even know it was connected to a book. There's a lot that we're watching. We don't realize it. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it comes from a book? And a lot of times they just don't come up with something fresh.
Because someone's already done it for them, right? The book is established, it's got characters. So it gives you an outline, I think. A lot of books are turned into movies that are not straight adaptations. And the writer for the store or the movie or the TV show has taken some liberties or added stuff, but it gives you a good base to start with. And someone's already done the legwork. Someone's already established the characters, the plot, and the setting. And it's an easy way to make a TV show or movie because you have a plan in place. You have a plot to follow, and there's, for the most part, a finite ending to a show or to a movie. And I think it's you have massive successes. Like you mentioned, The Old Man. I think the biggest recent success has got to be Game of Thrones, on the George R. Martin series. And he had the characters, he had the settings, he had established all that. He had an established following before that show was made. And you saw the success of that show. It went wild. People loved it. People followed it. They lived and died by the characters. And, though if you read the books, that ending in the show is not his ending, which he hasn't gotten to yet. So that is a great example of where someone had to take the book and continue on beyond what the author had established. So I think it's a great way to do a TV show, especially with established authors and established characters. That's not to say that an amateur or a novice can't come up with an idea that is incredibly marketable.
Do you feel that many times it's the book is turned into a show or movie, whether it's an established author or not, because it's easier for the producer or director to see the vision? It's already in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the times you'll see that maybe not the author writes the screenplay, but is an advisor. And so the author's on set telling them, this is what I pictured. And I think a lot of authors, especially the authors I deal with, write visually. They see the vision or the scene in their head, and then they try to describe it on the page. And I think most authors have to do that. They see a character in their imagination, and then they describe what they see in their mind. So it's visual to print back to visual, and the author is essential for that. Plus, it allows a little creativity here and there. You don't have to create all these characters, but you create side characters, create new plot lines, and hopefully you impress the author, or you take it in a way the author had never seen before. And there are, so many examples of that out there right now. People who are like myself watched the Superman trailer that came out for the new Superman movie. Superman, there's an established character. Comic book, there's a visual representation on the page. and yet we see different variations of him all the time, and keep getting movies and TV shows based on that literary character.
You, as our professional of the year, you know your stuff. This is like your craft, stories, of course, publishing, but the story behind it and the marketing of many of these different call them franchises, TV shows, and movies. Do you get frustrated when something is released and it deviates from the original intent? Like you said, Superman. If you think about the history of, there's all different versions of Superman that have been released. So when it deviates far from the original intent, that kind of bother you?
It doesn't really bother me. I like taking an established character in a new direction, but we live in a world where that doesn't always work out well. Social media and the internet, people go bonkers when a character that they love is reimagined, and it doesn't adhere to the author's original vision or version of that character. And you can run into a lot of trouble with that. One of the great myths about Superman is the Tim Burton movie that was never made, where he was dressed in a different costume and Nicolas Cage was supposed to play him. And people went bananas that this was all wrong. This is not what Superman is. Superman is bright. He's blue and red. And so there was a huge backlash for that. Didn't even get made. Then it didn't even come to life, and people were so angry about it. Another recent one I recall is when Robert Downey Jr. was cast as Sherlock Holmes. He's not British. He's Iron Man. He's from the Brat Pack from the 80s. How dare they cast him as Sherlock Holmes? And a
Mm,
lot of diehard Holmes fans were not happy. And they weren't happy with the movies because they were action, and Sherlock Holmes was in underground fighting, and it deviated enough where people were very angry about it. Which brings up another point. People love these characters. These characters are alive for them, their friends, their family, and you do not want to mess with them
mm.
because there could be a massive backlash.
So James Bond, that came from a book, right?
Yeah, Ian Fleming.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So we had many different reincarnations of Bonds, different actors, different approaches. I mean, you could have really taken different actors, but went in the same direction with each one. Yeah, I believe you could. All right, they put their little spin on it. Maybe they have a British accent, maybe they don't. Whatever it might be. Were there some Bonds that you just weren't feeling?
That's a good point because they're going to relaunch Bond eventually. And then there was talk of doing a female James Bond.
Right.
And it's already people have come out vehemently against it. This is how the character should be. The character is male. He always has been male. That's what Fleming envisioned. And how dare you deviate or mess with this character? There's been even people in former Bond movies that said, James Bond he's a guy. That's the way it should be. And to change it for the sake of change makes no sense. But again, growing up with James Bond, Sean Connery, uh,
Hmm.
original, I always partial Roger Moore because when I was growing up, he was the Bond in the movies that I saw.
I agree.
People, didn't like Timothy Dalton for some reason, or didn't like Pierce
Let's
Brosnan.
let's go here now. Why? Your opinion. I'll give you mine. Why? Let's start from whatever starting point, whether it's Connery, whether whatever.
Well, again, Roger Moore was the guy I grew up with. He was suave. He
He was
was
suave. That's
over,
it. I'm
not
right there.
overly bulky.
Yep.
His fight scenes were very limited in almost
Yep.
every movie that he was in.
Yes. He was humble. He was a ladies' man. He was Bond, but kind of leaned back, and that suave thing worked for him. So I'm right there on your page for sure. Sean Connery. What do you think?
The original, he was great for the movies that he was in, and then unfortunately he aged out, and they
Yeah.
made that Never Say Never Again, which was not the canon of James Bond, but he would play James Bond in that movie. Again, I think he was great for his time, right? He was a little
Yeah.
bit more um, masculine, machismo, not as suave, I think, is more. Um, but he was good for his time. And again, those movies, people who like them like their Bond. And then you move forward like Daniel Craig. Those had a lot more action sequences and set pieces than most of the Bond movies before him.
Daniel Craig. Nope. I'm telling I stopped watching Bond when he showed up. Wasn't my thing. I just thought he was kind of dorky, being honest here. It just I didn't feel it. He was not to me, he wasn't Bond. They were doing something different with him.
He didn't have Moore's charm. And
Yeah.
maybe he wasn't, that's not the way he played the character, which is, again, goes into the whole question. Someone writes it, a character or an actor takes over, and they're going to infuse their own personality into that character. And it may not be what the writer envisioned. Um, Anne Rice, who wrote Interview with a Vampire, when Tom Cruise was cast as Lestat, was adamant that that was not who she pictured. When she wrote the book, she pictured Rutger Hauer as that character, and that's who she described when she wrote that character. So
Hmm.
sometimes when you, ideally, we all get there when your book or becomes a TV show, a movie, sometimes it's not in your control what happens to it.
Hmm.
You just live with the consequences of who's cast and how it's done. I'm interested to see what they do with James Bond, like what's going to happen with that character.
Same. Um, I mean, the premise is the premise, but there's a lot of latitude in the directions that they can go. Timothy Dalton, you mentioned before. What were your thoughts on him?
He seemed more angry than, again, Moore was playful, suave, charming.
Hmm.
Dalton, I thought, was more angry. And the same thing with Daniel Craig. I think he played him like he was a weapon for the British. He wasn't a
Yeah.
person. He was there to do a job, and I think a couple of the lines in those movies tried to feed into that he didn't. There was nothing beyond the James Bond for him, where you got the sense that more there was something else going on with his James Bond.
Yeah, it's he blended the women and the spy within both, and yeah, I get Dalton he was and Craig more of a weapon. I That's a great way to describe it. How about actors who play Batman?
Oh, again, so many different ones at this point. You got Adam West back in the 60s.
Oh yeah, I wasn't even thinking TV. I was thinking movie,
Played it
but all right, let's start there. Let's start there. I think he did a good job.
with what he was given. It was supposed to be funny. It was supposed to be campy, and
Yeah,
he deadpan voice, and he was the serious guy in a ridiculous world, and that's how it was written. And
yeah.
then you fast forward to Michael Keaton. Again, Timothy Burton takes over. It's a dark, brooding Batman. Again, the fight scenes are not really there. Where
Hmm.
you get Christian Bale plays him, a little bit more athletic. But again, that brooding thing, Ben Affleck plays him too, and he takes it in a different direction. And then Pattinson. Pattinson's a younger version.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
He's almost like the mental issues outweigh what he's doing as Batman. Like I like that. And again, different variations. Who knew what like Bob Kane and Bill Finger originally wanted when they came up with the Batman character in the what 38, 39 area?
Hmm.
You
Wow.
never know. But again, you have a visual representation. So as a producer, the legwork for me is not so much. It's a recognized character. Marketing is almost easy to do because I just plaster the bat and I'm ready to roll.
And even Michael Keaton, now that I'm thinking about it, it was dark, but he had a likability, and I think that's because of his other movies. Like I just see him as in a certain like his foundation is here, and now we added Batman on top of it, but I still see his foundation at the same time when he was Batman. I don't know if that makes sense.
And that's interesting too, because then the character in comic book changes a little bit because everyone knows Keaton as Batman. The character changes, and the character changes with Christian Bale. So the writing feeds the other media, and then the other media feeds the writing as that character continues to live on. So again, it's an interesting dynamic. One without the other, I think they both become popular, more popular.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, the movie's a bomb, and then everyone said, "Oh, the book was so much better."
That's probably the best thing to hear for a writer. They still got paid. They still got paid.
And again, they keep pumping them out. Bridgerton was a
Mm,
massive success on Netflix as books. Okay, that's, Gossip Girl in the 1800s in England.
wow.
And we talked about like there's no new plots, there's just different variations of it. So that's what that is. So again, that was a book. Netflix looked at it, said we can do a lot with it, and it hit. And I mean, that's great. Um, Pretty Little Liars is another one that hit on HBO based on a book. Uh, Interesting cast, well acted, but again, it started off as a book and became something more. No, I can't think of it. Oh, The Handmaid's Tale. That was massively popular on as a TV show, and I knew many people were like,
Hmm.
"That was a book." And like, yes, that was a famous book, sometimes taught in colleges, um, that was turned into the TV show. And the TV show far outstripped the plot of the book, which is an interesting concept too, when the TV show goes beyond what the book had.
If you had a sizable budget and a production company and were able to take a book and turn it into a movie or TV show, and when I say book, one that more people would know than not,
Okay,
which one would you pick to turn it into something?
that's a good one. I was thinking like classics, but those have been done so many different times.
Or has it been a classic that has been left out that has not been adapted to the screen?
So, my thought was that one of the first things human beings ever written was Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which has some really incredibly simplistic humanistic themes. I don't want to die. I don't want my friend to die. I want to be immortal. Immortality is impossible. We're all going to die. And it was written, 4,500 years ago or 5,000 years ago.
Mm.
Never been a movie, never been a TV show. And I like those classics. In fact, The Odyssey is now a new movie with Ray Fiennes as Odysseus. So I like bringing the classics to the modern audience. So I just thought Gilgamesh was has never been made. It's got some fantastic themes to it, and it's got a great story. So Gilgamesh.
You brought back a flash in my mind. The Matrix. Was that ever a book?
Not that I'm aware of, but it had
Yeah.
aspects of different books to it. The red pill, white pill. They referenced Moby Dick a couple of times, chasing the white whale.
Mm.
But I don't believe it. I'm not sure, but I don't think that was a book. But it had obviously literary elements to it, and it has the plot line and the themes. And again, they pulled four movies out of that concept, I think, right? I believe there were four. But then
I think
like
so.
all sorts of different books become TV shows, become movies, and I think a little trend right now is that sci-fi fantasy because of Game of Thrones. You have Disney picked up Percy Jackson, which is a series of
Oh
books.
wow. Wow. My kids are teens, so right as soon as you say that, I'm like, well, oh, there's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah, so that again, we for us, our books and TV have been made, and now the younger generation are getting their second version of a book that they love. There was a movie, didn't go over so well, so now Disney's doing a TV show of it. And I always tell like different students, things you loved as a kid will become these incredibly intense movies when you're an adult. And they'll take all these wonderful childhood memories and not ruin them, but kind of ruin them.
Do should you write a book with the intent of it maybe becoming a movie or TV show? Should you be thinking that vision?
I don't see why you wouldn't.
Okay.
Um, Ideally, we write books because we're literary and we want to engage people through the written word. But we live in a world of TV, of movies, of streamers, of so much different media. If your book is good, and why wouldn't you want it to be shown on all sorts of different ways? Again, we could run into that problem where it goes beyond your control. But again, writers, they're writing the scenes that they see in their head. So I think the books we write are the movies we see in our head, and we're just putting it down on paper. So it goes from our head to paper, paper back to the screen.
To that point, yeah, I could see somebody writing, but getting more visual in the way they write if they're thinking, maybe this could be a TV show, maybe this could be a movie. So it might even enhance their writing style if they're like, if you hear the principles of manifestation, where you think it happens.
Mhm.
What you think becomes your reality. So think of it more in terms of the screen, and it'll have more of a visual vibe to it on paper or on small screen. If you're in, ebook, you're just thinking in a different way. And I'm picking up on, I think you've said something similar to that when we got started today.
Yeah. It actually is a great way to get rid of writer's block too, is if
Mm,
you have trouble with a scene, you write as a screenplay and you're forced to look at it through a different view. Like, how would a camera show this? How would the characters move in it? Is my scene missing movement? Okay, have I gone total like Ernest Hemingway White Room and I've been writing dialogue for 27 pages and no one's moved?
right.
And if you take that and turn it into a screen or try to write as a screenplay, you're like, oh my God, I got to have something happen. My audience is going to be bored out of their minds. And that allows you to see your book differently. And it's a good way to get rid of writer's block.
Hmm. Uh, Now we're talking about this. It's not always easy to write. Like as we're wending our way through all of this, it can be challenging.
Writing a book is not easy. It's I think what you talked about before, time consuming. Eats up your whatever your normal day is, whatever your normal job. You have to allot some of your time to think about your story. You think about your characters,
Mm,
and then you find yourself writing things down on notepads when you're supposed to be paying attention to something else. Um, Being a professional writer is difficult too because you're expected to produce.
right.
Like if you're a pro, why haven't you done anything the last month? I don't have any ideas. I don't get paid. I'm in trouble too. So yeah, it's not easy. And I like mentioned before, it's magic when it happens, but it's workable magic.
Yeah, and you think about, put it in terms of music. How many artists have released something? It was huge. It was fantastic. Then the follow-up, it was all right. Then the third album that came out, not so much. I mean, Peter Frampton back in the day, biggest
Uh,
double selling album ever. Huge. His follow-up album was all right. And then he got soft, and there was a picture of him on the cover, and it was sort of like you could put it in like a Playgirl magazine, and that's where he's a genius, but that's where it kind of went in a different direction. It's almost like his plot went we knew him as a rocker, and now he's like a soft ballad guy, toward the early 80s, and that kind of was it. That was the last thing he did. He still tours, but his plot changed in a way.
Trying to reinvent himself, and it didn't work out as well as he had hoped.
Yeah.
Mm, Like for authors too, recapturing that magic. You produce something fantastic, and then your second and your third, and you're struggling, and then you realize I am struggling. This is work, and it's not working out well. And that's why I think like writing in a different genre
Mm,
or taking a break from writing and doing something else, artistic, painting, sculpture, what have you, might
yep.
unlock something in you.
I had a different direction, like even music. Beyonce, she wasn't doing too much, and then did something with a country flavor to it, and it picked out. It stuck. Some country people weren't super happy, but by and large, it brought her back. NFB Publishing is your company. Refresh us on the website. How do we find you?
So just go to nfbpublishing.com. There's a short form to fill out. All our titles are listed. If you have any questions about the writing process or anything else that we can help you with, we are here to help.
I love the fact that you're a smaller company, touchable, attainable, and you walk the journey with somebody, and just anybody's considering anything in terms of writing or creating a book, I urge you, go to the website and take a look at the titles. These are a lot of regular people publishing books, and it varies. There's so much going on there, from fiction to nonfiction. Mark, always great having you on here, and looking forward to a new year, and all the best to you and your family. Happy holidays.
You too. Happy holidays.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.